Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day Conference Call. This is Barbara serving as your host today, and Brother Pete is here as your co-host.
I'm so glad to be a part and to have everyone join us today. Thank you.
Okay, here is the question. Why did Rome fix the date for Easter? Well, modern Easter has no basis in the pure religion of heaven. All its traditions are pagan, and I think most of you know that. Rabbits and dyed Easter eggs symbolize fertility. Hot cross buns were the cakes offered to the Queen of Heaven. You can read that in Ezekiel. The 40 days of weeping for Tammuz are now the 40 days of Lent leading up to Easter. And sunrise services were performed by pagan priests to honor the sun god. And now you may have heard of sunrise services even in churches on Easter as quite common. So Easter is much more than a pagan imposter pretending to be Christian, lurking behind the pretty facade. Easter is a cover-up for the greatest fraud of all time. A calendar change which hides the true day of the resurrection and the true Sabbath day Sabbath. The true seventh-day Sabbath. So prior to Constantine changing the pagan calendar to Easter, the Romans worshipped Cybele and her lover's son Attis during the spring equinox festival. Cybele and Attis represent the Babylonian Ishtar and Nimrod.
How did Easter get into the church? After Constantine decided to Christianize the empire, Easter was changed to represent Yeshua, Jesus Yeshua. But at its roots, Easter, which is how you pronounce Ishtar, is all about celebrating fertility and sex.
Okay, here is something for you.
Yes, the Great Dispute, known the Easter controversy, began in the 2nd century AD. This is when Roman bishops and emperors sought to unite their entire empire, the Eastern Asiatics, Israel and the surrounding areas, with the Western Roman churches, Italy and surrounding areas, for the purpose of celebrating Easter, their replacement of Passover, on the exact same day of the week. This plan was not fully successful until Emperor Constantine, at the Council of Nicaea in AD 321 through 325, instituted the new 7-day planetary week. The sun was given the highest honor, as the first day of the new cycling week was called Dies Solis, that is, the day of the sun, and the 7th day, called Dies Saturnus, that's the day of Saturn. This new week was cut from the cloth of their former 8-day cycle week, and therefore had no rhythmic connection to the week of creation, no matter how difficult it may be to give up this notion. And that is taken from, well, the reference is given. That's a quote from the creationscalendar.com. There we go.
The Roman Church created the observance of Easter, and Victor, Bishop of Rome, proclaimed that Easter must be celebrated on the first Sunday after the full moon following the vernal equinox of their Roman calendar model. And this was done to ensure that Easter would never fall on a biblical Passover. And this effectively caused Christians to be out of sync with the heavenly cycles on which the Father based his lunar feast calendar. Let's see, the bishops of Rome, I have to move my screen. The bishops of Rome had Emperor Constantine make a law forbidding the holy feast days. In 321 AD, at the First Council of Nicaea, They established the date of Easter as the first Sunday after the full moon following the March equinox. Find my screen. Okay, so the churches in Asia, though, they rebelled against this, and they were unwilling to compromise with observing the Roman Catholic calendar, and they still wanted to observe the holy feast days of Yah.
Passover versus Easter. The point of contention appeared deceptively simple. Passover versus Easter. The issues at stake, however, were immense. The only way to determine when Pesach or Passover occurs is to use the biblical lunar solar calendar. Reference given. Quote, these contentions had agitated the churches of Asia since the time of the Roman bishop Victor, who had persecuted the churches of Asia for following the 14th day heresy, as it called it, in reference to the Passover. The future Easter observance was to be rendered independent of Jewish calculation, which of course meant lunar solar calendar calculation.
And you'll see on the left of March 2024, when we're doing this video, Easter is going to be, of course, March 31. And it's following the equinox, the first after the full moon. And the biblical calendar, Passover is always the 14th day of the first month. And so they called it a heresy, and they forbid people to keep the Passover date.
In AD 325, at the First Council of Nicaea, Emperor Constantine wrote, quote, it appeared an unworthy thing that in the celebration of this most holy feast we should follow the practice of the Jews, who have impiously defiled their hands with enormous sin and are therefore deservedly afflicted with blindness of soul. Let us then have nothing in common with the detestable Jewish crowd, for we have received from our Savior a different way, which would be, of course, different from Torah. In other words, he condemned the holy feast days by saying that they were Jewish. What he didn't say is that the Messiah from the tribe of Judah is the one who is fulfilling the feast day.
So as the years passed and the first Christians died, paganism began to corrupt the once pure faith. And the church in Rome, greedy of ever greater power, sought ways to increase her influence. And this is a quote, to conciliate the pagans to nominal Christianity. Rome, pursuing its usual policy, took measures to get the Christian and pagan festivals amalgamated, and by a complicated but skillful adjustment of the calendar, it was found no difficult matter in general. And to get paganism and Christianity, now far sunk in idolatry, in this, as in so many other ways, to shake hands. That would be Protestantism and Catholicism shaking hands. And this change of the calendar regarding Easter was attended with momentous consequences. It brought into the church the grossest corruption and the rankest superstition.
This change of calendar also changed the day of worship. This is admitted by Roman Catholics who point to it as a sign of their authority. Quote, Sunday is purely creation of the Catholic Church. And quote again, they, the Protestants, deemed it their duty to keep the Sabbath holy. Why? Because the Catholic Church tells them to do so. They have no other reason. The author of the Sunday law is the Catholic Church. And that from the Ecclesiastical Review, February 1914.
Okay, and that's for people keeping Sunday. And we believe that Saturday was correct, but now we have found the Creator's calendar to show us differently.
Here's the real difference of Easter Sunday is kept as a day of worship because of Easter Sunday. It is claimed that the Savior was resurrected then. Consequently, it is assumed that the day before Easter Sunday, Saturday, is the seventh-day Sabbath.
So one Catholic bishop went so far as to state, and this is the quote, "It was the Catholic Church which made the law obliging us to keep Sunday holy. The Church made this law long after the Bible was written, hence said law is not in the Bible. The Catholic Church abolished not only the Sabbath, but all the other Jewish festivals." And that's from T. Enright, Bishop of the Catholic Church there in Missouri, and I'll leave these links below. So the truth is, Easter is a fraud. It is not the day upon which the Savior rose from the grave, nor is it Saturday, the seventh-day Sabbath of the Bible. Easter is and has always been a pagan holiday celebrating fertility.
Jews today worship on Saturday rather than on the biblical seventh-day Sabbath. However, Jewish scholars admit that the calendar in use for worship today is not the same as that used in biblical times. Quote, "The new moon is still, and the Sabbath originally was, dependent upon the lunar cycle." That's in Holidays under Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, page 410, link given. The Jews point to the extreme persecution following the Council of Nicaea's decision to set aside Jewish time calculation as the reason for why they no longer use the biblical calendar.
Okay, so Jewish scholars understand that Christianity stepped free of its biblical roots when the pagan Easter was substituted for the true Passover.
Jewish scholars understand that, at the Council of Nicaea, the last thread was snapped, which connected Christianity to its parent stock. The festival of Easter had up till now been celebrated for the most part at the same time as the Jewish Passover or Pesach, and indeed upon the days calculated and fixed by the Sanhedrin in Judea for its celebration. But in future, its observance was to be rendered altogether independent of, quote, Jewish calendation or calendar. Quote, Emperor Constantine stated, "For it is unbecoming beyond measure that on its holiest of festivals we should follow the custom of the Jews. Henceforth, let us have nothing in common with this odious people. Our Savior, who was a Jew, was shown us another path." It would indeed be absurd if the Jews were able to boast that we are not in a position to celebrate the Passover without the aid of their rules, that is, their time calculations.
I think all this history is forgotten. We had no idea that the Passover and Easter were originally kept at the same time according to the Jewish calendar. So how is Easter determined? Well, Easter falls on the first Sunday after the full moon date based on mathematical calculations that falls on or after March 21. If the full moon is on a Sunday, Easter is celebrated on the following Sunday. Although Easter is liturgically related to the beginning of the spring in the northern hemisphere, the March equinox, and the full moon, its date is not based on the actual astronomical date of either event. March 21 is the Church's date of the March equinox, regardless of the time zone, while the actual date of the equinox varies between March 19 and March 22, and the date depends on the time zone. The date of the Paschal full moon, or that's Passover full moon, used to determine the date of Easter, is based on mathematical approximations followed in a 19-year cycle called the Metatonic cycle. Both dates may coincide with the dates of the astronomical events, but in some years they don't.
Vatican City, June 19th, 2015. Speaking to a global gathering of priests, Pope Francis signaled an openness to changing the date of Easter in the West so that all Christians around the world could celebrate the feast on the same day. The Pope, on June 12th, said, quote, "We have to come to an agreement," end quote, for a common date on Easter. His comments came in remarks to the World Retreat of Priests at the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. The event drew priests from 5 continents. The Pope joked that Christians could say to one another, "When did Christ raise from the dead? My Christ rose today and yours next week," adding that this disunity is a scandal. The Orthodox Church normally celebrate Easter a week after the Catholics. Some Orthodox leaders have also reflected on the dating of the Christian holy day. In May, Coptic Orthodox Pope Quadros II, I'll try that, wrote to the papal Nuco in Egypt, suggesting a common date for Easter.
Okay, so Rome has already changed the calendar 4 times. 1, Rome changed the calendar in 153 BC, the first of the year from March 1 to January 1. 2, and in 46 BC, when Julius Caesar ordered that Rome no longer calculate the months by the moon, removing new moon days. 3, later in 321 AD, Constantine adopted the 7-day planetary week in place of the 8-day Roman Republic calendar. When adopting this pagan planetary week, he moved Saturday from the first day of the week to the 7th day, meaning that the current Saturday is the 7th day of the week only by virtue of a pagan Christian Roman emperor. 4, lastly, Pope Gregory XIII refined the Julian calendar in 1582, removing 10 days from the calendar count. And note, it is claimed that the order of days did not change in 1582, which is true, but does 7 go into 10 evenly? And now Rome is behind a 5th change, a new world calendar. And this has been in the works since, I think, 2012. A new world calendar will someday come out with all these days always fixed on it. So Passover versus Easter. This year, it's March 31. This would be your Easter date on a Roman Gregorian calendar versus Leviticus 23:5. That says, in the 14th day of the first month at even is Yah's Passover. So Yah's sign is the Passover.
It, Passover, shall be as a sign to you on your hand, and as a memorial between your eyes, that Yahweh's Torah, that is the law of instructions, may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand Yahweh has brought you out of Egypt, and you shall therefore keep this ordinance in its season from year to year. Exodus 13:9-10.
So that is the end of this study, and I hope to access more information for you to go and study the Creator's calendar, to know the Passover dates, the signs in the heaven to know when the holy days are, that you can go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. So thank you for being here today, and we appreciate all of you.